Today's episode is sponsored by Marcus Fabrics. Marcus's Block of the Month programs are among the best in the industry, combining unique, beautifully designed quilts with thoughtful, well-organized programs. Their Block of the Month span a variety of timelines, themes, and creative approaches, giving quilters endless options to choose from. Check them out at marcusfabrics.com. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 313 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustryalliance.org. Today on the show, we're talking about stitching with my guest, Mollie Johanson. Mollie is a professional designer, illustrator, and stitcher. She's a contributor to Simply Sewing magazine, Love Embroidery magazine, and World of Cross Stitch magazine. And World of Cross Stitching magazine, and the author of 4 crafting books, including her latest, Stitching Super-Cute Food Kawaii Style. Mollie shares creative inspiration and patterns on her long-running blog, Wild Olive, and has helped thousands of makers discover the charm of hand stitching and other crafts through her Etsy shop, online tutorials, and in-person workshops. She lives in the Chicago area, where she strives to make super cute stitching part of her daily life. Mollie Johanson, welcome.
Hello. I am so glad to be here and doing this with you.
Yeah, so excited to talk with you. So people should know that we are very old internet friends because we
Yes.
both had craft blogs where we were sewing cute stuff for kids, etc., way back when. And so we actually just met for the first time last year at H&H and met again this year at H&H, our industry trade show, which was lovely.
Yes. I do like that you said we're very old internet friends because sometimes I've been doing this long enough that I just feel very old.
It's so true. And the internet has changed a lot since we first started. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's kind of backtrack a little while. And I know you live in Chicago now. Is that where you grew up?
Yes, I actually live in the same house that I grew up in. So I have been
Wow.
here my entire life. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay. So what were you like as a kid? Were you a crafty kid?
I was definitely a crafty kid. I got to spend a lot of time with my grandma. My parents worked together and they would drop me off at my grandma's house. I was still an only child at that point. I now have 5 younger siblings, but I spent a lot of time with her. And so she taught me how to sew. I have my great grandmother's sewing machine that I learned to sew on. She taught me to embroider, and I would say she kind of like gave me this like rough intro to it because she would let me choose from this little rack of colorful sewing threads, and she'd give me a needle and she'd let me have one of her kitchen towels and say, just go for it, start stitching. And so for years and years, you would still go into her drawer and find those towels that I had just put like little running stitches of colorful stitches on. She kept them and used them that way. So she introduced me to that. My mom was very crafty. She was a garment sewist in like high school and beyond. And so it was just always around. And I was always, I was also homeschooled, and creative messes were always encouraged, except for the one time that there was a newspaper reporter here because homeschooling was so novel. And that was the time I decided to like pull out some paint and just like have it everywhere when they encountered me. So that was very on brand then and now for me to just create and make messes.
And you said your parents worked together. That's unusual. So what did they do?
My dad did like safety assemblies, and my mom assisted with that, and she would do everything from like running the sound equipment to doing puppets and keeping things on track. So yeah, that was on and off, they have worked together in different capacities through the years, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So they would go into schools. You're
Yeah.
saying safety assemblies would be for children in schools.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they would go into schools, but you were homeschooled.
Correct. Yes, a little unusual. My dad was actually a teacher, an art teacher. He has recently, like this last year, he went back and was filling in as an art teacher again. He might retire finally, but yeah. So he was a teacher, and my mom was a preschool teacher. So they both came from an education background, and I would say both a very creative education background
Yeah.
specifically. So that it just made sense for them. They felt like that was going to be a good fit for me and our
Yeah.
family. Yeah,
Very cool. Okay. And so now you've got lots of younger siblings. You
I
have
do.
five younger siblings. That's a big
Yes,
family.
it is a big family. We are spread out quite a bit in age, and that makes it kind of fun. And I would say that everyone has some element of like creative pursuits that they follow. But specifically, my youngest sister, she's 21. She works as my stitching assistant now. So we get to work together on things, and that's a lot of fun. It's
Yeah,
really
and
nice to have.
I got to meet her at H&H. She came to the
Yeah,
show,
I know.
which was lovely.
She had a fantastic time, and so I just keep she's very she's definitely an artist, but I keep trying to, like, draw her more into the craft business. It's slow, but it's happening a little bit.
Okay, so when you finished high school, what did you want to do? What did you think you wanted to do, and what was the next step?
So, after high school, I went to school for graphic design, and I was working in that I did a community college degree, and I immediately started doing freelance graphic design after that. And ironically, in my classes that I was taking, like, I took Adobe Illustrator, and at first I was like, "Ugh, I don't wanna take this class. I don't see myself as an illustrator at all. I just have to do it." And I learned that I really enjoyed working in that software, and that I kinda liked actually drawing things as well. I mean, I would draw and doodle, but it wasn't ever something I saw myself doing as a job, but I really enjoyed it a lot. Following college, when I was doing freelance design, I did some book design work for a really small independent publisher, and I obviously, like, all of the things that I was doing then sort of came together to, create this background of information that has been really helpful for me now. But I didn't I never would have seen myself going into being a full-time professional crafter and designer that way. It was a pivot that happened when I was actually going through, like, a really hard time with some work that I was doing, and I just thought, "Well, I'll just do this kind of for fun." My sister encouraged me to start a blog, and, thank goodness she did. But, yeah, I just started doing it just to have something else so that I wasn't thinking about work because it was just rough, you know? And so that became my creative outlet, and then it just sort of spiraled from there. And to, the point where eventually my my work on my blog and my shop and the other kinds of, work that I pick up as a pattern designer, it pushed out the graphic design to where I have, like, a couple people that occasionally I'll do a favor for, and it's just all creative stuff now. Not that
And
graphic design isn't, but,
yeah, yeah, this kind of creative stuff.
this
So,
kind of stuff.
so what year did you start your blog? What year was that?
Ooh, I wanna say 2004?
Okay.
Does
Yeah,
that
and
sound I would think that's approximately when
yeah.
maybe it was even a bit early. It was early 2000s. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I started mine in May of 2005, so that does track. I mean, how did you come up with the name Wild Olive?
So, Wild Olive, it actually comes from, a scripture verse about this idea of, like, joining God's family, and so that just always struck me as something that I liked, and so it stuck, and now I still use the name Wild Olive, and it's definitely part of what I do, but I've also been really working to make sure that people saw me as Mollie Johanson, whereas before I might have been, only Wild Olive. Now I've sort of started balancing and having more of me in there.
Yeah, and I think that's reflective of the way the internet has changed as well. I think
Yeah.
there was a long period of time when we were online, but people would always say, "Oh, you can't meet somebody in person that you met online. That might be an axe murderer. Like you
That's
don't
right.
know who they are. So you would use kind of a pseudonym. My middle name is Jane, so I was Abby Jane back then, and
Okay.
and then as time has gone by, I don't know if you would agree with this, but for those of us who sort of monetize an online presence, it's become much more professionalized.
Oh, I agree. Yes, it is. Unless you really want to establish a whole separate business from who you are, I think that using your name makes a lot of sense. If you're going to have a business and you're going to attach like it's a whole separate brand or a store, it makes sense to have a business name that is not who you are. But if you want to be known for yourself as a designer, I think it makes so much more sense to use your own name.
Yeah. Okay. And when Wild Olive first started, you said you were having a kind of a tough go at work and wanted to do something that was sort of an outlet creates creatively that was more personalized. So what kinds of things were you blogging about and writing about in those early days?
Uh, Probably anything and everything, and I don't know if I should actually say this on a recording, but it's all there. It's still there. If one wanted to dig into the depths, it
I
could be
think
found.
good for you for not going back and deleting. A lot of people do that, and it's very tempting.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that have gone away, obviously, just because things don't all work anymore. Photos are gone, etcetera, and I probably should clean up even more of that, but I was showing the some of the illustration work that I was dabbling in, both from a digital standpoint and on paper. I was showing the crafts that I was working on. I had some more food things. I had goofy little links to interesting things that I found. It was definitely a more like a diary of my thoughts and things that I was working on and what I found interesting at the time. And then it took me a while before I started to really focus in on things and learn which things to drop because I needed to be by the way, I don't find myself to be a very focused person in general. I have all kinds of things going. I f For someone who designs the kinds of things that I do, I don't think that I'm quite as niche as I should be on certain things, but I definitely saw at that time that I needed to start bringing things in a bit more. So then it became a craft blog.
Okay. All right. And was being connected with this group of early bloggers influential to you, or did it help you in some ways? I mean, back in those days, you could count the number of craft blogs on maybe two hands or hands and toes. And so it was a very small community. People knew one another, and there was a very strong comment culture on people's blogs, and there was blog rolls. We would link to one another, etc. So was being connected to that really worldwide community important to you?
Absolutely. It was part of a daily routine, or in your daily routine, you'd hop online and you'd go around and you'd check and see who had something new to share and how you could connect with them. And it really, I mean, I know we spoke last week about how you kind of saw those people as your friends, and maybe they weren't really, but you interacted with them enough to where you knew about what was going on in their life, and that really made a difference. And it seeing how people were sharing the things that they were making and little pieces of their lives and where that might take you was really interesting and inspirational. And yeah, I mean, it felt like you got to be part of something special, especially as you look back. Like, it really does feel like that was something unique, and I'm sure there were different little pockets, right? Like, we were in a circle of people. I'm sure there were other circles of people that were existing that somehow we had just not crossed paths, because every once in a while you'll encounter those even now where you go, "Oh, look at this person that has been doing this for a long time, and I never knew about it." But I think that what happened then was really it was really special and important to be a part of.
And for me, there was an exposure to a Japanese craft aesthetic that was new to me because
Yes.
by knowing this international community of bloggers, I learned about Japanese craft books and craft magazines and the Japanese kawaii aesthetic, which was new to me. And I remember back in those days, everybody would share ISBN numbers, and you would go onto Amazon Japan and type in the ISBN number to find these books and order them from Japan, and they would come. And I remember getting Cotton Friend and all of these books that were like totally brand new to me. And where I still have them. I have a whole stack of them. I would never get rid of them. They are so precious
Yes.
to me. So that Japanese influence, especially on like the cuteness, and we'll talk about your signature cuteness aesthetic, but was really strong, at least from my eyes.
Absolutely. I also have still my shelf of, Japanese craft books, and, I am fortunate enough to have a Kinokuniya, Japanese bookstore not too far from me, so I would go and I would scour the pages, and the thing that's really interesting about, eh, you know, as Google Translate came into play, you could read international blogs in different languages. But when people were sharing those books too, you quickly realized, I don't even have to read any Japanese to be able to take in and enjoy these books that are presented in a way that is you could actually still understand if you could follow a diagram. So, yeah, that was I don't think that I would have gone looking for those if it hadn't been for people sharing them through their blogs. And yeah, you would share book reviews of these fun things that you found and share a few photos, and then you go scurry off to find the next one.
To find them. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay. So back then you were blogging lots of different things and kind of honing in on what you were good at and what was resonating. And so how did that develop? I mean, I feel like you're really, as I said in the intro, a stitcher. You're a person who stitches things, does
Yes.
a lot of hand stitching. So sort of talk about the evolution to your current sort of aesthetic, and also like medium, like cross stitch and embroidery and using felt and things like that.
Yeah, I had like I said, I had started to do a little bit more illustration and was comfortable with that. I did a teeny tiny little craft show at my, part-time workplace that they hosted. I worked at my local public library at the time, and so I made some embroidered items to sell at that, like some keychains and bags and things, and I really liked that, but I felt like I could not take on making all of the handmade things. Time is that is very difficult to keep up with that, and I admire the people that do it so well and are selling finished embroidered items because that's a commitment. Um, but I then went, "Well, wait a minute, what if I sold embroidery patterns?" And because of the background that I had doing graphic design and using Adobe Illustrator, I was able to very quickly create patterns that looked like put together and were gonna work, and so I started selling embroidery patterns digitally. It was before Etsy made it easy to sell digital items, so everything was like, "Yeah, you're gonna make this purchase," and I was manually emailing out every single pattern because that was the only way, and it it worked, and then I would show more things on my blog to go along with that, tutorials and things showing off what to do with this embroidery that you're doing, and it just connected, and then from there, I started, because of the blog world and how everything worked, I remember the first time someone contacted me to say, "Hey, we would love for you to create a project to go in this book." And again, who would have thought that I was gonna start having things published in books? I didn't expect it, and so it really just kind of grew from there, and embroidery has always been my first craft love, I would say, really going back to when I was a small child, and so it still remains that way. I avoided cross stitch like the plague because it felt so slow and I just couldn't do it, but I always loved the look of it and I wanted to, and I avoided it, and a magazine reached out to me and said, "Well, would you like to design some patterns for us?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't do cross stitch." And they said, "But we think that you could actually design these patterns for us." And they would be really cute. So I gave it a go and they said, we'll do all the sample stitching. So that's fine. And so I worked on it and I designed cross stitch patterns for several years before I ever started really picking up and stitching my own samples, which felt a little weird to do, but it was working. And then I found a method of doing cross stitch that I loved. And so now I work that in when I can. And so it's still the same style. And sometimes I'll even have the same overall pattern that is available for both embroidery and for cross stitch. And then felt crafts came in. One time I thought, it might be kind of fun to design some felt ornaments. And I released a pattern set and it was really popular. And people kept coming back and saying, make more, make more. And it took me like several years before I finally got around to making another one. And now it's become almost like one of my favorite things to design are felt patterns. They're just like, I use the embroidery along with it. It's still incorporated, but like the felt, you get this, it's a different tactile experience and you get to layer things. And so it's really fun to do that. So it's just sort of grown from there. But it started from me making a couple things and then going, I can't possibly make all of these things. I need to make it one time and then sell it over and over and over again. And that has worked quite well for me.
I want to take a minute now to talk with our sponsor, Marcus Fabrics.
Hi, my name is Patty Violick, and the name of our business is Marcus Fabrics.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Marcus Fabrics.
Okay, well, Marcus Fabrics has been in business a very long time. It started out as a company called Marcus Brothers, and then the company was evolved, and we hit our 100th anniversary in 2011. We were 100. The company became 100 years old, and became Marcus Fabrics. And in that time period, we've always kind of stayed true to our core business, which was reproduction fabrics. We started out with a designer, Judy Rothamel, who was actually looking for fabrics to repair an old 1930s quilt.
That's amazing. And so that's wonderful focus on reproduction fabrics. And I know you do some collaborations with museums and sort of maintaining the history of fabric design.
We do. We have a collaboration with Sturbridge, which we have had many, many years. And it's very interesting because we're able to go to Sturbridge, we're able to work with the curator there, and they bring out some just incredible examples. And it's not just the quilts. I mean, we look at pottery, we look at old wallpaper, and these things, the artwork of that kind of era, it just is not done today. Um, and today you have the added thing with AI, which you get some of these things and you're like, oh, that's just not right. But it's very interesting. And then we have a collaboration with the Smithsonian, which is fairly new to us. And that has also been a fantastic collaboration with them. We work with their textile division, which is in New York, which is the Cooper Hewitt.
That is so fantastic. And you have a block of the month program. So tell us a little bit about that.
We work with a lot of very fantastic designers, and it's a lot of work putting these programs together. And it's really good for the shop owner because they're able to offer a block a month. It's almost kind of like a Christmas program where it makes it more affordable for somebody to, consumer to be part of the program. And the designers do just beautiful quilts that maybe, it's not a quick and easy quilt. It's something that's maybe a little bit more challenging that becomes an heirloom.
That's great. So wonderful. So tell us where we should go to check all of this out.
So you can just go on our website, which is marcusfabrics.com. We every month we have a new carousel with all of our new fabrics coming out. We have a Made for Marcus section, which offers all free quilt projects that are associated with our collections. Just our designer page to see what our designers are up to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Patty.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you so much, Marcus Fabrics. And now back to my conversation with Mollie. And when did I feel like you're really known for the anthropomorphic, little faces that go onto inanimate objects, whether it's a dumpling or a shoe. I mean, it could be pretty much
It could
anything.
be anything.
So when did the little face come in?
Those, I think, came in pretty early. I mean, certainly my very first patterns that I made, they were a set of like sewing themed patterns. It was like, but it was a thimble, a spool. I don't remember what else was in there, but they all had faces on them. So I think really from the first point that I started doing some of my little illustrations that weren't even embroidery, they had little faces on them. I, it's just something that I always feel like I should do. It feels weird to not put a face on things.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked to different publishers at different times about the degree to which cuteness really sells, and it's really about the face. Like, especially if you're making a doll, obviously that's that's something that's supposed to have a face on it, but I do feel like cuteness and a smile. It's something about like the human reaction to that we just want something that's smiling at us.
Yes, I think especially now, like, people are looking for something that is going to just make them feel happy, give them that little spark of joy, and, uh, smiles do that. I also sometimes make my little designs frown or look a little bit upset or whatever because, we all have different emotions, even cute food. But, yeah, no, it just felt like the right thing to do. I also definitely grew up loving Sanrio and Hello Kitty things, and so you would see those kinds of things, or at least that feeling, regularly. And I discovered some years ago, that my grandparents had some friends that lived in Japan, and when they would visit, they would bring things home. And one of the things that they brought that my grandparents had out in their dining room in a basket for all of my childhood were these little wooden vegetables. And you might not notice at first, but when you go look closely, they all have faces. These were like out on display in my grandparents' home, vegetables with faces. And of course I am blessed to have them still. But I thought just those little things, they're around and they influence you. And clearly that influenced me without me realizing until later. Oh, no, food with faces. That just felt normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious about you do a lot of tutorials on your blog, and tutorials, if anyone's tried to create one, a visual tutorial with, text in between the photos requires a lot of step outs, which are these step by step photos where you're showing, the kind of crucial steps in sewing something that somebody needs to follow. I mean, we live now in the day of video and everything's like a quick, 30-second video of somebody sewing. But for a long time, and still in your blog, there's step outs, and it's like, here, sew this piece to this one, turn it this way, etc. So I wondered if you could share a little bit about what you've learned about taking good step out photos and writing good tutorials.
Yeah, that's first of all, I now do work in video quite a bit because that's, how it needs to be. But from a personal standpoint, I've always found step outs to be very helpful. I like being able to see what's right in front of me and not have to go back and keep watching something over unless it's literally you need the motion of it. I would rather be able to look at something and read it. I'm that kind of visual learner. So I think to some extent that just felt natural to me to present it that way. But what you really have to do is you have to be prepared to um, yeah, lighting is always the biggest thing, and I am a huge fan of natural light. If there's any way you can shoot in natural light, that's what you need to do, which means that your schedule has to look a lot like you can only work during certain hours on your step out things. So the way that I like to work is to really just work on the one thing all the way through. I know that in some situations like on books, if you need to send your project to have another photographer shoot the photos, you have to work and make it however many times up to the point where the photo is going to be. 6 photos, that's 6 versions of the project all up to whatever is in the photo. And so from a time standpoint, it's actually a lot easier to be able to do my own photos, right? Whether it's for a magazine or a book. For my blog, obviously it's going to be me, but that means I don't work in a really fancy location. I've got a table near a window that is semi south facing because that's what's available. I've got white poster board and some other colorful boards, and I prop things up as needed. I do have some supplemental lighting that I can use if I absolutely have to, but being near a window and then working during those hours and just, I think the practice of laying out your project and looking at it through the lens, take those photos, look at it and see how it actually looks. And then definitely I've spent so much time looking at other people's photos too, just to say, okay, what is the thing that makes this work or not work? What is different from my photos? Oh, it's weird shadows. Oh, the background is uh, a little bit more interesting, tidy. Oh, they've got a few little accessories in, more like a flat lay, and just kind of paying attention to those. Certainly, looking at things in published magazines has helped me go, oh, okay, yeah, that's the thing that my photos were missing, and just really practicing a lot of those photo skills. It has it has served me so well. I do shoot on a DSLR camera. I invested in a macro lens because essentially most of what you're doing is like macro photography. You're looking at these little close-ups of things, and that really helped a lot. So, but nothing is the fancy version of anything. I keep it pretty simple, and that has helped a lot. And then really, I try to just sometimes I'll take more photos than I need at different steps along the way so that I have them, and then I can decide which things need to be visually represented and kind of doing that editing process from an information standpoint. And yeah, I'm thinking about what those steps need to be to have it make sense. And when I'm on my game, I'm taking meticulous notes of all of the little things so that I know, a lot of times I have to work things out where you have to make the entire project in only 6 steps, exactly 6 steps, in fact. So you have to think out, okay, what things do I need to show and what things do I need to drop out? Oh, I really could make this in 4 steps. What are the additional things that I need to share that would be helpful? And yeah, you got to plan those things out a bit in advance and then also realize as you're working on it what needs to shift and flex with things that way.
And I imagine that Pinterest has been a huge help to you because you have very pinnable projects. There are projects that are DIY instructions. There's lots of free projects on your blog with detailed step outs. The lighting's really good. The final project's super cute. It just feels like something that's so Pinterest worthy. I don't know if Pinterest has played a big role in your growth.
I think it has. I have been not as good about being on top of Pinterest lately. It's been one of the things that has sunk to the bottom of my list as I'm trying to keep up with all of the things because it seems like every time you turn around, there's a new thing that you need to pay attention to and be on top of. And Pinterest has slipped for me a little bit, but that's a reminder that I really need to get on it because it's true. They're very visual things and they are shareable. And yeah, if I can, even create those pins that up that factor where it the the fonts and everything presenting the project up the cute factor, that's helpful.
Yeah. And you mentioned some magazine work that you got to do fairly, early on in this process where editors were finding projects through internet searches of some sort, landing on your blog, and then reaching out to ask if you would design a project for the magazine. So, doing that kind of magazine work, what have you learned from that process and what's been important to know about working with magazines?
I have it's a really interesting thing because I think with the kinds of projects that I design, in a sense, a lot of what I do is technical writing. And so you have to really be prepared to go with what is needed in a particular case. Like sometimes you got to really tighten it up and have you've got one page that you get to present a project and write up your text. And then other times I would have things where the word count was significantly longer than what you would need to present a simple project. And so learning when and how you might need to pad out your text a little bit, or also when you need to go to them and say, hey, this isn't going to work to try and meet this word count because it's going to sound repetitive, and kind of standing up for what needs to be has been really helpful to learn that as I go. I it's I've learned like I don't usually pitch to magazines very often. It happens occasionally when there's like an open call and I would pitch some things, but a lot of times I will receive a, hey, would you do something along these lines? And so being able to jump in and create something for a specific need or a theme has been a fun challenge. Definitely, I have grown a lot of my skills by taking on something that I wouldn't have thought to do otherwise. So I think that openness to different kinds of opportunities was really, I mean, obviously it was great to have those opportunities at all, but being open to different options has been really good.
And how did your first book deal come about? You've written a few books now, and I don't know, are they all with different publishers, same publisher?
I have worked with 3 different publishers over,
Okay.
uh, well, my first book came out 11 years ago, but obviously I was working with them for a chunk before that. So my first book came out with Lark Crafts, which at the time was just, I mean, it was the dream publisher for me, and
They were the best. They
they
published
were,
my second book, and I
yeah,
loved working with them.
they were so good. I loved the people there. I loved all the things that they were making, and I had I'm trying to think if before that I had already contributed to a number of books where I would, at the time, it was pretty common to have a book that was put together by an editor, and you would have maybe 10 or 12 designers that contributed to it. And so I had already done a few projects like that. And I think we're to published together in at least one of those books, like a fat quarter book or something. But I had done a few of those, and I'm pretty sure at least one of them was with Lark Crafts. And one day, I was sitting down and I was talking with my mom, and she said, "What do you think you want to do next in your, creative career?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, this sounds crazy, but I'd kind of like to write a book." And 2 days later, I got an email from someone at Lark Crafts that said, "Hey, would you ever be interested in writing a book?" And I went, "Whoa, whoa! I got to be careful what I say." Um, but yeah, it was. We just immediately started working on that, and I didn't have to put together like a formal proposal as a result of that. I did do a little bit of, here's what this might look like and be interested in doing. And I said, I'd really like to write a book about kawaii food. And they said, well, we were thinking that maybe it would be about animals. And I said, I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't like draw a lot of animals. That's really beyond my comfort zone. And they said, well, just think about it. And so I started drawing a lot of animals. And so my first book was called Stitch Love, Sweet Creatures Big and Small, and it's all animals. I did work in a few, um, like there's a happy carrot for the bunny rabbit to eat and some things like that where I worked in just a few little extra food things. But it was it was such a new experience because before it was make a project, send it in by this date, done. And navigating, planning out a whole book and then doing all of and going back to those Japanese craft books, I was highly influenced by those when I had this idea in mind of what my book would look like. And so one of the things that I said I wanted to have were pages full of all of the embroidery motifs fully stitched where you could see them on those pages, that they were full pages of embroidery that way. And they said, "Are you sure you really want to stitch all of them?" And I said, "Yeah, I really do." And it definitely delayed the project. It took longer than I could have estimated, but it was the thing that I felt like made it really special and unique. And I'm still so proud of deciding to do that. So it was also a challenging thing because I happened to be writing this at the same time that Lark Crafts was bought out by Barnes and Noble at the time. It has since been bought out by other larger things. It's just sort of gotten swallowed up. And so it doesn't exist in any way anymore. For a while, it was still there as an imprint. It's just gone. And it was really sad. It was really hard to jump between editors in the middle of the project, especially because I'd never done a book before. And it felt like mild trauma in the moment, and especially because all these people lost their jobs. So I felt like this weight of it. And it was really hard to have a book come out in the middle of all of that. And then beyond that, I did two books that were with Quarto under their imprint, Walter Foster, and those were work for hire projects. So they were cross stitch, and they came to me. They said, "We need this kind of book. Could you make it?" I said yes, and did those. And
Work for hire projects come with their own challenges. And
yeah,
I wrote one of my books as work for hire. I also did a kit with Quarto that was work for hire. And I mean, it's interesting, right? They have a concept in house that
yes,
they say we want in my case, it was a mini felt taxidermy kit. And so we're going to go out and find a designer who can make this kit for us. And so that was the job. And it was really like, in some way it's like a freelance gig in a weird
yeah,
way, versus writing your own book where it's like, this is a body of my work that I've put together as like a comprehensive portfolio, exhibiting one particular concept or a set of concepts. So really different. So even though in your first book you said food, they said animals, and you did animals, it was still your concept. And I, by the way, have Stitch Love, and I stitched so many of those motifs onto my kids' clothing. Especially, I had three little kids at that time, and they were all little. And there would be clothes that they didn't want to wear. They didn't like it. They didn't like those shorts anymore. But if I put the dinosaur on the shorts, then they would wear them. So it was like I
oh,
stitched them on all kinds of things to make my kids wear hand-me-down clothes that they didn't love.
I have to tell you, even though we knew each other and were friends, like your review of that book still to this day probably is the most meaningful because I knew that you really just like dug into the thing. And I also knew that you've always been really real and honest with those kinds of things. And so I was like, okay, that was that was glowing. Wow. But yeah, no, it was different because I with with the first with Stitch Love, it was we think animals, and I sent them some ideas and they're like, yeah, great, go for it. And I was just kind of I could do what I wanted to do at that point.
Right.
Whereas with the other two books, they're called Cross Stitch Celebrations. One is Bundle of Joy and one is Graduation. They they knew what they wanted and they approved every single thing along the way for it.
Right.
And again, it was more like when the magazine would come and say, "Hey, we need a set of birthday themed patterns." So, yeah, it was closer to doing that kind of work. And really the thing that was unique about those books, those work for hire books, was uh, I I also got an agent, a literary agent, at the same time because she had been approached by the publisher to find an author, and so it was kind of a package deal. You get the book deal, and now she represents me, which has been a fantastic experience. So I didn't,
And what's been fantastic about that? Because I don't have an agent, so it's always interesting to find out.
yeah, I didn't think I would need someone, and knew a couple people that worked with this person, and so I knew that it could be good. And then every once in a while, I thought, do I need that? But it just felt unnecessary. But when I went back to, especially going to write now this book that I wanted, it was the latest book. it was really helpful to have her. So things that I have found especially helpful with having an agent are, um, she knows all of the things to look out for in a contract that
Right.
um, she would never have let happen in my initial contract, that she was like, no, 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 we're not going to do that. I just feels like having somebody else on your side. I don't have to have the difficult business conversations that I'm so bad about, right? Like advocating for yourself in those situations, especially when you really do want to write the book, right? Like the first book, I probably would have done just about anything. And I probably agreed to things that I shouldn't have because I just wanted to write the book. And she, when things came up with someone that needed more than the original plan, I could just say, "Hey, can you do something about this?" And she was like, "Okay, great. It's just handled." And uh, having that extra person she's also very well respected. And I think that when I I've gotten the rights back to my first book, and she went and she asked and they handled it. Whereas I would have bounced around, I think, quite a bit in a big publisher, and she knew exactly how to handle that. And so I feel really good about just having that extra person on my side. And yeah, she's really encouraging. She's taught me also a lot about things in book publishing and what you need to know about, especially writing a craft book, that I never would have thought of before.
All right,
So,
tell us one thing that she's taught you that's important that we might all learn from.
okay. So the thing that I have really, really, I told you, I'm not a very focused person when it comes to the things that I get excited about. And she told me, well, your first book, it probably was, you had too many things going on with it. I had embroidery. I also had some small sewing things. So there were like mini stuffed toys, and everything involved stitching, but it was just not focused enough. So it was very difficult for it to be categorized when it comes to, what section it's going to show up on Amazon. Like at one point, my book was number one in the stuffed animals section. And I was like, why is it in stuffed animals at all? It's an embroidery book. It had like 3 or 4 different categories. Where is it gonna go in a store? Where is it gonna go on a library shelf? So having it be more focused in what the book, like who your audience really is in terms of even the craft itself was I never would have thought how important that was. And I was talking with someone at H&H about, I talked about with several authors, and as I was hearing some of their things, I was like, I wonder if their book is gonna be focused enough, because that just comes to mind straight away for me. So that was really, really helpful just to have her go, think about these things when you're putting together your book plan and their proposal following that.
And so tell us about the new book now that you've had these different experiences under your belt and you've been doing this for a long time and you have an agent. Tell us about the new book, how it came together.
So I really decided, okay, I think it's time to write another book. I want to make this happen. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do the book that I thought that I wanted to do from the beginning, right? Why not put that proposal together? And so it is all food themed. And I very early on knew that I wanted it to be something where it was going to be divided into the different like categories of food. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, produce, those kinds of things. And so I started working on my proposal, and I was not very focused with it. And then I showed it to my agent and she was like, okay, well, maybe think about this. And okay, yeah, okay, great. So we focused it in, and she just kind of helped guide a few things and put the whole thing together. I've learned so much more about what you need to have in a successful proposal. And we sent it out to a few places and talked to one publisher that was sort of like, maybe, you know, and then I was like, maybe, I don't know. We didn't immediately connect over what it would look like. And then we heard from the Better Day Books, who is publishing the book, and they were just really excited about it. And I was really excited because I absolutely love their overall aesthetic for their books. And so that felt like a really good fit for what I wanted the book to feel like. And we we connected and talked over all the things, and they have just been so incredibly encouraging. And I've felt like they've taken care of me as an author, and they've taken care of the book itself. And that has meant so much because unfortunately with my first book, because of the change in uh publishing and owners, it kind of just the people that cared about it weren't there anymore. And so
Yeah.
I felt like I had to navigate so many more things on my own then. I mean, I I'm never as good at self-promotion as I should be, which you have to be as a author, and I mean any of this kind of work, but I don't feel alone in this. I feel like they're really excited about the project, and it has been so it's been so good.
And the book is called Stitching Super-Cute Food Kawaii Style by Mollie
Yes.
Johanson, so people can go and take a look at it. And I'm wondering about social media. How much do you feel like their um, decision to offer a deal to you was based on your social media?
It's always gonna be a factor, and I know that like, for other publishers, it's even more important because I would say I have a a fairly modest following, compared to lots of other people. I encounter
Although you have 23.6 thousand followers, so people
Okay,
can make
yeah,
their own decision about whether
that's
that's modest.
that's I would say in the world of even craft influencers, right? Like, it's not uncommon to encounter the people that have well over 100,000 followers, or even I'll find people that say, "Oh, I started embroidering a year ago," and they've got 400,000 followers, and I go, "Oh, okay." I'm happy for them, but that is just not my experience. So, I think that it was important to have that because you do have to be able to drive sales of your own book. It's This is not the kind, certainly this, but Stitching Super Cute Food Kawaii Style is not the kind of book that, people just randomly stumble upon in large numbers. Yeah, I have to be able to drive, some of those sales. So having an audience that already connects and resonates with quirky food with faces was gonna be really important. So I think that having that strong, established following matters, and I think that also being able to show that you have a history of consistently creating cute new things that work, it really makes a difference, right? Like,
Yeah.
showing that you can do the work because it's a lot of work,
Yeah.
writing a book is a lot of work. It is not glamorous, it is not highly lucrative generally. It can be, but it's not there's no James Patterson of the craft book world. It just doesn't exist. So, you have to be able to do the work, and you have to really want to do the work. And so I think that I came with a good example of being able to do that. That's really helped a lot.
Yeah, okay. All right, great. And so people can get that now. It's available now
Yes.
at their local
Yep.
bookstore or on Amazon, et cetera, if they want to go
Yes.
find it.
Basically, any of the places that you like to buy books, you should be able to pick up this book.
And I want to get your recommendations, but before we do, we have to touch on our flying squirrel situation.
Oh, yeah.
So
The flying squirrel.
so years ago, I don't even know, how did this come about? I designed a flying squirrel. Oh, I think I know. Okay, Molly Makes magazine. Do you remember that magazine?
Yeah, of course. Yep, I do.
They contacted me and asked me commission if I would make a flying squirrel, and I designed a flying squirrel for them, but it had a pocket for clothespins because it was
Okay.
supposed to be so you could store your clothespins
Yeah.
on a clothesline. And then somehow I ended up also designing a version for you, and I don't remember how.
Yeah, at the time, you had some little, like, loveys. I feel
Yes.
like you had, like, a lion and maybe a
Yeah.
sheep. I don't remember all of them, but I I love working within themes, and so I had a particular month that the theme was flying squirrels because why not? And I thought a flying squirrel lovey would be the cutest thing ever, and obviously, I shouldn't be designing that. Abby already does that. Maybe she would make one, and so I just said, "Would you like to make a guest post?" And, wow, that was a good decision.
Yeah, so this flying squirrel has gone insane. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy. And it pops up and this, by the way, for folks listening, was 15 years ago. I mean, it was really a long time ago.
Mhm.
And it pops up everywhere. And in fact, recently my local library sent out a flyer saying we have some kids programming coming up. One of the days will be sewing a stuffed animal. And without they didn't know, but it was my flying squirrel
Yeah.
from your blog.
The fact that it was your local library, like, what are the odds of all
Crazy.
the libraries it could
But
be?
it's
But
been, like, stolen by
yes.
many, many scam websites. It's just been all over the place.
Yeah, I love, like, that's sadly, one of the ways that we keep in touch is like, "Hey, did you hear about the latest place that has the squirrel?" But, yeah, no, it's been incredible. And I love when libraries actually make you I mean, I like it when people ask before they use a pattern from my blog, but when a library is using one of those patterns, like,
Yeah.
awesome.
No,
Let's
I was happy. I
spread
actually
that.
reached out to them and explained what happened, and they were like, "Oh, you live locally, you should come teach." So I ended up teaching a workshop.
Oh, that's
So it all
fantastic. I'm
worked
so
out, but
glad.
it was just so funny. But it does sort of speak to just the overall popularity of your blog that single incidence is still bubbling around so many years later.
I do think it remains the most visited page on my blog to this
That's
day.
so bizarre.
I
Oh my
know.
gosh.
I
All
know.
right. Well, we can both be happy, and also disturbed by that situation. So,
I'm happy. I love squirrels. So
yeah, it's all good. All right. So you've got a couple of recommendations. One is zipper pouches and cute zippers, specifically using the Benzie Deep Etch dye. And I don't know what this is. So tell
yeah.
us.
So, Benzie Design, and I know that Renee was
Yeah.
on the podcast not
On
too
the
long
show.
ago.
Yeah.
I've worked with them to design some of their deep etch dyes, and often they combine with a lot of, like, the cute things that I like making. But this one, I made a dye that cuts basically, it's cutting out kind of like rectangle shapes, but it comes with all of the marked stitching holes, and so you can
Ah.
hand sew a zipper pouch, and
Oh.
I don't like doing a lot of machine sewing, so I avoid, like, machine sewing zippers like the plague, but I can hand sew these, and they're really fun and easy, and so what has happened is I just, like, wanna make tons of zipper pouches as a result of it, and so, like, at H&H, I was, like, scoping out all of the fun zippers and bringing home samples, and so I've just been obsessed with making zipper pouches, and that dye that they now stock is my go-to for making them. They're fantastic gifts, and I just wanna have so many of them.
I just took a look and they're super cute. So can you explain what a deep etch dye is?
Yeah, so they are metal, very thin dies that it's just the outline of the shape that you really have with them, and you run them through a manual die cutter. My understanding is that they can work with some of the, like, machine ones that roll them through, but it's not like a Cricut at all. It's these require these metal dies, and they cut through felt. They can also cut through paper, but, they cut through the wool felt, and you have the shape plus, in this case, you have the little stitch holes to work through. So you have even stitches every time, and everything matches up perfectly. So very, very helpful things. I love them.
Yeah, and would be a great project to do with, like, tweens
Yeah,
or people who are new to sewing, so
yeah.
that's a great
I'm I'm
great
actually
one, yeah.
yeah, thank you. I actually am gonna teach a class at Benzie Design at their brick and mortar this summer because it'll be fun to give people a chance to test it out.
That's awesome. Very good. Okay, and you wanted to recommend cottage life, having a spot to work and enjoy nature.
Yes, I'm not an outdoorsy person, but my family purchased a little cottage close to us, not too far from here, and, I it's like having the spot that is when you work from home, that's like work is just always there and you're always so having like a spot, and it does not have to be a cottage, but I highly recommend having a spot where you can get away and have some quiet time and maybe still sometimes work, but also just being able to take in more nature, especially with all of our screens around us, like it's it's incredible. There's no Wi-Fi there. I love it. I can't
Yeah,
recommend it enough.
that's great. It's like it's
Have a Wi
enforced.
yeah, have a Wi-Fi free zone. That's really what
That
this is.
yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then this I just favorited though. So this is a cookie tin sewing kit. So it takes like the cookie tin that we all think of, but it makes the inside of it like divided up into compartments, correct?
Yes, it's, this company, I think their name is Triple G, I should have this in front of me, but they 3D print these inserts, and it's like it has a round base that fits in the bottom, and it has little compartments in it, and then it has an extra little tray that you can set in on top of it, and it perfectly fits a a sewing tin. Yeah, it does, it's a sewing tin. A cookie tin. They do have some size recommendations on that. You can get the tin with it or you can use your own, but it takes, like, the grandma's sewing tin cookie thing up to a whole new level, and I got the upgraded version because it has, like, these little compartments where you can stick needles and pins in there, and it keeps them all separate and organized, and it feels like a luxury item, I'm not gonna lie. This is it's not really expensive, but, like, do we need this? No, but yeah, I kinda needed it. So, I've been obsessed with cookie tins and sewing tins for the last, like, 6 months or so. I designed an ornament pattern around it. I've also been eyeing a little fidget toy that is it's 3D printed and it's all, like it's this you can get the sewing tin or the cookie tin version. I these things are just similar to the stuff that I stitch. I love if something is gonna give a little bit of joy, and that's what this cookie tin thing feels like to me. And it's practical too, right? I could
Yeah,
get more
absolutely.
organized.
Right. So that's all that sums up craft perfectly. It gives you joy and it's practical too.
Yeah, there it is.
Molly, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. It was really great talking to you.
It was so much fun to talk with you and, yeah, share a few things about my whimsical little kawaii world.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today's episode was sponsored by Marcus Fabrics. Marcus's Block of the Month programs are among the best in the industry, combining unique, beautifully designed quilts with thoughtful, well-organized programs. Their Block of the Month span a variety of timelines, themes, and creative approaches, giving quilters endless options to choose from. Check them out at marcusfabrics.com. Thank you so much, Marcus Fabrics. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. When you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. Join us at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.